everyone that's joining in. Welcome to today's Dentbird webinar, AI-powered digital workflows, a new era for dentistry. My name is Jenna from Dentbird Solutions, and I will be your host for today. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate your time and interest in this important conversation about the future of digital dentistry. Before we start, I would like to briefly introduce our global speaker for today. Dr. Ahmed is widely recognized as a global leader in digital dentistry. He is the director of the Institute of Digital Dentistry and also our global advisor for Dentbird Solutions. So we're very honored to have him today with us to share his insights and experience. Please feel free to follow the presentation and drop your questions in the Q&A section as we will go through them together in the Q&A session at the end. So without further ado, I'll hand things over to Dr. Ahmed.
All right, welcome everyone, and I appreciate you all being here. I know it's you're all coming from all around the world. It's 6 p.m. here in New Zealand. I'm just about to have dinner, so let's make it a good show. Today is a title called AI-powered digital workflows, a new era for dentistry, and I think it's a topic that's really interesting, especially now. I mean, AI has just been a crazy buzzword in, I think, not just dentistry, globally. Everyone's talking about AI now, and I wanted to talk about how it's affecting dentistry and the workflows that come from it. And I appreciate Dentbird inviting me to their webinar series. So thank you so much, Dentbird. It's a great honor to be here and speak to everyone. So, once again, a big welcome to you all. My name is Dr. Ahmad Al-Hassiny. I'm a full-time private dentist, much like many of you are. And yeah, I love digital dentistry. I've been involved in digital dentistry for a very long time. I'm based in the corner of the world, a tiny country, New Zealand, population 4.5 million. But it's a beautiful country, and I'm very lucky to call this place home. Within New Zealand, I come from a family business. My father's a dentist, my mother's a dentist, my brother's a dentist, and so I really didn't have much choice, to be honest. It's funny, my father always jokes if he knew it was going to be like this, he would have had more children. But anyway, time is gone. And so in New Zealand, we own and operate 42 dental chairs. We have a big chain of practices here, and we have a full digital lab. And obviously, this has also led to the Institute of Digital Dentistry and all the different things I do. You guys may see me online. I'm probably in your email list. And yeah, I just think digital dentistry is probably the most exciting part of dentistry. It's just so fascinating. It keeps things so interesting, and it's changing every 6 months or so. And when I started in digital dentistry, this is what the options look like. And part of this lecture today, I didn't want to just talk about just Dentbird. I mean, even Dentbird didn't want that. They just asked me to talk to you about the entire industry and how these workflows are playing out. So, as I said, when I got into dentistry, this is what it looked like. It's quite crazy to think, guys. I mean, this is not that long ago, about 10 years or so. And these were kind of your options back then. It was either Plan Mecca, or at the time it was called E4D, or CEREC. And this is what the scanners looked like. They were monochrome, they were single shoot cameras, a lot of them at the time. And now we have this crazy like explosion of scanners everywhere. I think scanners are going to be in every single practice in the future. I have no doubt about that. I think every practice will have a scanner, and we are getting close to that. I mean, what is scary though is how fast it's all changing. We went from two scanners to, there was like four or five, and now in the past few years, there's over 25 scanners. And I need a better hobby, but I, for some reason, review and use all these products a bit like a tech YouTuber. And it's just been so fascinating to see the industry evolve and develop over time. And I think all of us can accept the fact that the digital revolution is truly here, guys. Everyone's talking about digital. You go to these conferences all around the world, that's all about digital. Even some traditionally analog companies are now digitizing. One thing that comes to mind is W&H announced a CBCT and a whole like digital portfolio they want to release. And this was at IDS, and this is a company that does handpieces. So you can see what is happening to our industry, and it's incredible. Now, tech adoption in dentistry, I'll just pose a little question to you guys. You can have a think if you're having lunch or dinner, wherever you are in the world. Where do you think, the different types of tech adoption in dentistry are right now? Because in any adoption of any technology, whether it's cell phones, electric cars, anything, you always have this bell distribution. You always have the innovators that jump on first, and then the early majority, then the late majority, and then the laggards. And so in dentistry, something like intraoral scanners, all the stats show they're around 40 to 50% in the leading markets. That's quite incredible, guys. You're getting close to a majority, if not already there. And obviously, the leading markets being things like USA, Australia is a very big market for intraoral scanners. And then all the other countries are somewhere either between 10 to 40 to 50%. But slowly, I can almost guarantee that within the next 3 to 5 years, having an intraoral scanner in a practice is going to be the norm. It will be just like having a handpiece. And then we think, okay, what about all the other technology? Because a scanner alone is nice, but it only does so much for your practice. And this is where all these AI workflows come into the page. Because a scanner alone allows you to replace impression material. And granted, some of you may just want to do that. I just want to take a scan and I want to send it to the lab. But some of you may want to do some 3D printing, may want to do some milling in-house, maybe with some CBCTs, make a surgical guide, etc. And so what's really interesting in dentistry is how we're seeing this play out. CBCT is around, they say, 15 to 20% of practices, especially in specialist practices like oral surgeons, etc. It's very high. And then what's fascinating to me is that 3D printing is adopted more widely already chairside compared to milling machines. And that's really fascinating because milling machines have been working and trying very hard, things like CEREC, to get into dental offices. But we've seen in the past few years a huge uptake in 3D printing. And then there's the AI. And the AI is a very upcoming kind of piece of technology as we all get more familiar with it. And AI comes in many different shapes and forms. Today, we're going to focus on crowns because I love restorative dentistry. If any of you have connected with me on Instagram, you would have seen that I do a lot of same-day dentistry. But AI doesn't just impact crowns, it is also impacting our diagnostics, etc. And I think right now, a lot of us, we think of it as a kind of like a gadget, a nice to have. But I think AI within the next few years is going to be the standard, especially for things like single crowns, because like most things, most of us have used ChatGPT. And I think upon reflection, we can see the benefits of using it, not just because it can answer a lot of things, but it just makes you more efficient. AI to me is a tool that improves our efficiency. And, efficiency in the practice or in the lab means more money, essentially. So, for any of those who are listening, this may be you, you may be still using impression material, please go buy an intraoral scanner ASAP because the time has come. You're totally falling behind now. And what's interesting to me is that an intraoral scanner really is your gateway into digital dentistry. It is the step one. And then there's a whole different world of possibilities that await you. And these are things like the patient experience. I'm going to talk about AI a little bit again. With the patient experience, there's a lot of AI tools to show a patient a smile design, etc. Then it goes to the AI tools for CAD CAM. And I think this is one of the most exciting things because that naturally leads to some form of same-day dentistry or in-house workflows. I think the most important thing that's stopped a lot of clinicians getting into same-day dentistry is the fear of learning CAD. They don't want to learn exocad. And fair enough, I think we're all busy enough as it is. But with AI, I think this is going to be the real key to unlock this, especially with this huge rise of 3D printing. Because a 3D printer alone is totally useless. You need to have some sort of CAD completed, some sort of design, whether it's a surgical guide, a model, a crown, a splint, something needs to be done to be able to plug that into the printer and print the appliance. Now, this is the issue with the intraoral scanner market. It is extremely crowded. I've talked about this a lot on my podcast with many really cool speakers and many really cool industry. And I don't really think dentistry needs 30 intraoral scanners. I think the market is begging for consolidation. And for those of you who maybe are looking for a second scanner, an upgrade, or maybe their first scanner, you may be like the guy in the corner there who's just totally confused. And this is part of the reason why I started Institute of Digital Dentistry. It's a majority free resource. So pretty much everything is free except some CPD courses that I run on the website so that I can keep the business running. And if you go into reviews, you can go into intraoral scanner reviews. And like I say, I need to probably pick up better hobbies because for some reason my hobby is reviewing scanners. You can see and read a totally objective review on every single one of these scanners. And so if you're struggling to make a decision on which scanner to buy, I don't think there's a better resource. I may be biased, but start there. And one question I always ask people when they tell me which scanner should I buy, it's really simple. What do you want to do? Because someone who wants to do Invisalign is very different to the oral surgeon who just wants a scanner for some surgical guides, is very different to the guy who wants to do same-day dentistry in-house. And now the biggest change or differentiator that I'm seeing between scanners is how well do they scan edentulous, because that is probably the biggest differentiator now. Of course, you can also just hit me up on Instagram. I get a lot of messages every day. This is my Instagram account. You can find me at dr.al-Hassiny. And yeah, just message me. I live and breathe dentistry. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I get them all the time. Which scanner should I buy? Which printer should I buy? So please just reach out and connect. Now, apart from talking about scanners for an hour, which I can do, but I want to move away from that because I'm sure you guys have heard it all before. Here's the general market trends that are happening now in intraoral scanners. Prices are plummeting big time. It's interesting about prices though, because you still have the premium tier of scanners. You still have the Trios 6, the Trios 5, the iTero Lumina, and now some Chinese companies are also going to premium like the Shining 3D Elite. But for those who just want a impression tool with very little else, prices are going down, down, down. When we started with intraoral scanning, the entry level price was around 40,000 to buy a scanner, and it wasn't a very good scanner. Nowadays, you can buy a pretty good scanner for around 8,000 USD, and it's quite good. I would say it does the job. And in some markets, you can find scanners for 2,000 USD. The other interesting thing about scanners is subscription fees are basically out. Also, all scanners are free of subscriptions and yearly fees except for iTero. But I put a question mark there because the other interesting thing that's happening to dentistry is everything is moving to the cloud. I don't know if you've noticed, guys, every company is talking about some sort of cloud platform. DS Core, 3Shape with their cloud platform, Straumann is making a cloud platform with their Access platform, and basically every company is rushing to the cloud. This is going to be the future. And the issue with cloud is that you're going to pay some form of subscription fee either for the services or for the storage. So in a way, subscriptions are back, and I guess we just have to accept the fact that we had a good run for a long time with cloud storage being totally free. The other thing is that they're all fast. So in this day and age, if you buy a modern scanner, you can't go wrong. Every single scanner is fast. They all work. It's all totally okay. The difference is now is workflow and software. This is where they differ tremendously. Some scanner software is excellent. Some scanner software is not so good. And I would say edentulous scanning is also a key differentiator. And one market trend we're seeing is wireless scanners, and as I mentioned, cloud and AI. AI is becoming massive, AI in all things, whether it's diagnostics or CAD. And, this AI word, I kind of hate it because it's become a bit of a hype word. Everyone is talking about AI. When you're scrolling on your Reels or your TikToks and you get those advertisements, it's always something about AI. But in dentistry, it's actually having a profound effect, especially on CAD. And when we talk about CAD CAM, this is basically how to imagine it, guys. This is CAD CAM in a nutshell. So you have your on your left all your inputs, your scanner, your CBCT, maybe a face scan, and there's a lot of good cheap face scanners now. And then in the middle, you need a CAD software. You need to design something. And then your output is your milling machine or your 3D printer. And as I mentioned, some of you may just stop at the input. You might just buy a scanner and that's it. I'm happy with that. And look, that's better than not having a scanner. So I'm proud of you of doing that because the more of us that digitize, the better. I think every dentist should digitize ASAP. But for those of you who want a little bit more, this is where you need to really learn the CAD side, right in the middle. You can see it there. This is basically stopping a lot of clinicians from doing anything in-house, whether it's a splint or a crown. This is really the key. And why I'm really fascinated about these AI CAD tools is I strongly believe this is going to be the thing that unlocks in-house dentistry, in-house CAD CAM, sorry, for a lot of dentists around the globe. So let's talk about the outputs to start. Really briefly, milling, we all know what milling machines are. Some of us actually may not, because unless you go visit a lab, if you just scan and send to the lab, you don't really know or maybe imagine how this all works. But essentially, these are the common materials in milling. So you got your silicate ceramics like lithium disilicate from Emax, from Ivoclar. And this is one of my favorite materials. I use it all the time. Then you have things like the hybrids and the composite blocks. You, of course, have zirconia, one of the most famous and popular materials for everything in the mouth. And you also have things like acrylics, like Ivotion dentures, which I would say are, digital dentures is another very interesting topic in dentistry right now because I think it's going to almost totally replace traditional means. And we know, like, all of you get crowns from your lab. You know this works. This is a simple case of some zirconia crowns. They fit. Everything is fine. And here's another case of some single visit dentistry. When you're moving these workflows in-house, you can do all of this in a single visit. The patient has to come once. It's prepped. It's designed. It's milled. Done. And there's a lot of advantages of doing this in-house. For one, I really hate temporary restorations. I hate doing them. I hate when they fall off and the patient has to come back. So the less I have to do, the better. And with milling machines, look, you've seen them around, and milling machines, for the most part, haven't changed that much in the past 5 to 6 years, maybe even a decade. Milling machine technology it's in its maturity, I would say. It's getting a bit faster with zirconia milling. That's about it. The materials are improving. We see some zirconia updates, but no one's really excited about milling that much anymore because it's mature, it works, we know, and it does the job really well. And if you're thinking about chairside milling, here's your options basically. There's a lot of milling machines out there, especially some of you may be in different parts of the world where local milling machine companies are quite popular. One that comes to mind is Radon in Turkey. But this is generally the market leaders across the globe. You have CEREC on the left, everyone knows what CEREC is. And then you have things like IMES, iCore, DG Shape, Plan Mecca, and VHF. Now, one thing I'll pose as a question is, why didn't milling become that popular? Apart from CAD, because we know that CAD is difficult, and we know that dentists struggle learning and they're scared of this technology. But I think another key part of why milling machines didn't really exceed more than 10 to 15% in adoption chairside is the cost. A lot of these milling machines cost a lot. You're talking about anywhere between 20 to 60,000 USD. And a lot of clinicians around the world decided, I don't want to invest in that. And then we have the other output form. So remember, we have the input, the design, and then the output. And the other output is printing. And I think printing is probably one of the most exciting topics. Maybe a little overhyped in dentistry, but it is very exciting and it's changing how we do things. I think printing, why it's so exciting is because it's low cost. Printers cost less than milling machines, so a lot more clinicians are adopting them. And the other thing about a printer is that it doesn't just do one thing. You may argue with a milling machine you can do multiple different restorations, but ultimately it does one thing, restorative. No one really mills guides anymore or splints. Printers basically replace that. But with a printer, you have like a workhorse in your practice. Models, surgical guides, splints, aligners, which is, I'll just put one of these with aligners because it's not quite there yet. But you also have restorations, which are getting a lot of hype now, printing crowns, and dentures. And genuinely, 3D printing dentures is actually very good. And I think printing has replaced milling in a couple of things. It's the gold standard now for surgical guides, and it's the gold standard for splints, next to thermoforming, of course. The other interesting thing about printing is models. When you think about models, that's very boring, but many of us are digitizing. Many of us are buying intraoral scanners. Sometimes you just need a model. You just need it for study models, for thermoform appliances. So it's very common for many of us to buy a printer because we need a model in our practice. And if you're not taking impression anymore, this is why you buy a printer. And then you use the printer for all the other things. Now let's talk about crowns because this topic is about, AI design and CAD and single crowns are the most commonly scanned indication in dentistry. Some estimates up to 90% of all scans are for a single crown. And so this has become a very big topic. Can we 3D print crowns? Is it going to disrupt milling? What is the story there? And I'll get into that in a second. One thing I will explain to you is with 3D printers, if you thought you were confused with these scanners, well, there's over 200 different types of 3D printers on the market. 200. And how you make a decision on 3D printing, just to make it really simple for you guys, is you work backwards. And what I mean by that is you look at which resins you want to use and you make sure the printer you buy can use those resins. Because printers a lot of the time are a resin game. It's purely about which resin, and I don't mean which indication, I mean which specific resin. And I'll give you an example of that. For 3D printing crowns, in my opinion, as of recording this webinar and presenting it live for you, these are my top three for printing crowns. I think Rodin Sculpture is a fantastic resin. It looks amazing. I think what Sprint Ray is doing with Crown HT is amazing. And of course, the new resin by Bago, VarioSmile. So if I was looking for a crown printer, I would make sure my printer of choice can use one of these. Because otherwise, every single printer is totally open. As long as you have a CAD design, you can plug it into the printer and it will print it. Okay, so that is enough about scanners and printers, but I just wanted to give you that introduction a little bit so you understand how this all fits together. Because when we talk about AI CAD, a lot of people don't really understand why we do this and what is actually the point. And the point is so you produce something in-house. So now let's talk about the CAD part, because this has been the same for a very long time. CAD CAM software traditionally was Dentsply, Exocad, and 3Shape. There's a lot of different other software out there for specific things like surgical guides. You might have Real Guide or Blender for dental in general. But these are kind of like the market leaders for the longest time. And one interesting thing that's happening with CAD CAM software is a lot of CAD CAM software is going on the cloud, just like Dentbird. They kind of pioneered this idea of having CAD on the cloud. But most software is going on the cloud. We already see that with Exocad, with Design Suite, but that is locked to iTero scanners. And a lot of us don't have iTero scanners. We also have some interesting characters coming on the market because I expect this market to be more and more crowded, such as Circle One, and you're getting more and more people trying to solve this. In my opinion, and I've used basically all these CAD softwares, at the moment, there's two real market leaders in terms of market share because they have been around the longest and they've probably done it the best. And the two leaders right now is 3Shape with 3Shape Automate. And the software does an amazing job. One downside of 3Shape that I see is it's a little bit not clinician friendly if you don't own a Trios scanner. So 3Shape are doing a great job bundling this with Trios, and and selling it if you have a Trios scanner. But if you have a Medit scanner or an Allied Star or many of these other scanners, you can't actually use 3Shape Automate unless you have a Trios, you have Exocad, or you have 3Shape Lab software, because it does not accept STL upload directly. It only accepts case files, which is kind of interesting. I've told the company to just open it up many times. And then we have Dentbird. Finally, on the Dentbird webinar, we get to Dentbird. And, I've been in touch with this company ever since I saw it it must have been IDS 2019. And I saw their booth, or maybe the IDS after 2019, 2022. Actually, that was a COVID year. It must have been 2019. So I saw their booth, and it kind of caught my attention because they proudly announced cloud design, cloud CAD. And, this was quite advanced for 2019. They were doing something that was, I would say, far beyond their time. And so, what all this web-based AI CAD business is that, and I repeat, guys, you're going to see all CAD softwares do this in the future. It's just the way dentistry is going. Basically, more things are moving to the cloud, and that means it's cloud computing. You can run this software on any web browser. There's becoming less and less demands of having a very high-tech computer because everything is just run on the cloud. And so a little bit about Dentbird. It was actually founded in 2019 in South Korea. And, they launched their official Dentbird thing in 2022. And they've been on a bit of a development cycle. So they've always been totally open. You have to be if you don't produce any scanners. So you're open to all products. And so they accept all forms of scans, STL, PLY, OBJ, etc. And what's interesting to me is that A, they were quite far advanced, and B, they've done a few really cool things with their software, like adding bridges and implant crowns, because I see a lot of CAD software going onto the cloud, but they usually only do a single unit, a crown, an inlay, and onlay. And because this company has been developing their software for so long, they've had the opportunity to grow it into quite a feature set, and it does a lot of different indications now. The other thing they just added recently is multi-case processing. And this is more interesting for labs where you can run simultaneously 5 cases and process them. So for the labs, and by the way, guys, a lot of labs use AI CAD now, especially for single crowns. This idea that a human has to touch every part of the process is becoming less and less necessary. But for labs, they can run multiple cases at the same time, which is important for a lab, slightly less important for a clinic who's most likely going to do 1 or 2 cases a day on average. And over the years, what they've also done is really improved the anatomy, because a lot of us who do CAD as clinicians, we really want it to do 2 things. We want it to be simple and we want it to look good. Many of us, we're not technicians, frankly. And a lot of this scares us because we get really caught up about, where are the cusps sitting? Is it going to be right? Is it the right occlusion? And thankfully now AI does a lot of the heavy labor and does most of the work for you. And what the company has done over the years is now improved the morphology, make it look good. And so what I want to talk you through is just the process. So you get an idea of this AI CAD thing. How does it actually work? And so you just go into the Dentbird website, you click login, and then you log in. You can go through Google or you make an account. It's all very straightforward. Once you log in, you see something like this. And here you'll have all your different designs, etc. And what you need to click is the top left plus sign. And when you click that, you'll see this. There's Dentbird Crown, Dentbird Modeler, and Dentbird Studio, which is kind of like their canvas. They have a lot of different tools in there. Most of you are going to use Dentbird Crown. You click Dentbird Crown, and this opens up. It tells you to drag and drop the files or try with a sample case. They have a huge database of sample cases. For those of you who want to try this out, This is all totally free as well, which is important to mention. So you can have a little play around, and especially for those of you who want to start learning a bit of CAD, you can try this all out just on your web browser. So, you drag and drop the files, and some of you may be wondering which files. It's the scan files. I was going to say design, no, it's the scan files. And as I mentioned, it can take STL, PLY, OBJ, any scan file. You export it from your scanner, and then you drag and drop it into here. And because it's a web browser, you can just open this up on the same laptop that's running your scanner. Once you do this, the software does a few cool things. And firstly, it uses AI to classify your data. And what does that mean? If you have multiple different scans or upper lower byte, it will automatically align all the data sets. So upper will be upper, lower will be lower, and it will connect the bytes together. And it also, as you can see, takes color files because you can see it in color, and it will show you a 3D model that you can rotate and check everything's correct. Then you get into the design phase. And once again, this is all on a web browser. It is amazing how far dentistry has come. You click design, and then you get to this page. It takes a few minutes, maybe a minute or two, for the AI to process all the data and then put a margin line there. So it will place a margin line for you automatically. Take note, this is where your preps become important because it doesn't matter how amazing the AI is. If there is no margin because the prep is not so good, the margin line is not clear, and then the AI can't draw a good margin line. Now, it will try attempt one automatically, and you can edit this, which I'll show you soon. But what it also does with AI is it identifies the tooth number and also identifies which type of restoration. You can see 4/6 crown, and we've selected the output to be 3D printing. You also have a bunch of other tools, color maps, etc. This is all very standard AI stuff. So once you click on this margin line, it gives you margin line tools. And what I really like here is that it colors the undercut. So you can see where your margin line or your dot shouldn't be beyond. And once again, for those of you who are not familiar with AI or CAD or anything like that, it doesn't hurt to just try a couple of sample cases and try to learn this. Even if you just watch a few YouTube videos and try to figure out how this works. So a lot of this margination process involves clicking on those circles, those dots, and dragging them onto your margin line. This will be a very fast process if your margin line is good, and a very slow process if your margin line is not so good. And you have a couple of different tools, the dots and the lines like most software, and you also have a pen tool if you just prefer to click and hold and draw a line to draw your margin. Now, once you do that, and you're happy with the margin line, and you say, yep, that's perfect, you then click generate. And this is where the whole cloud computing and AI thing comes into it, because you haven't really done anything except told the computer where the margin line is, or confirmed where it drew the margin line. And then you click these buttons, either one of them. They put one in front of you and they put one on the bottom left, just so you can't miss it. Once you click that, this is literally what the software does automatically. I didn't do any sneaky stuff. I didn't do a really nice CAD design. I'm actually not that good. I'm not very artistic. So technicians, when they design teeth, it's like watching a technician do a wax up. They're much better than a clinician trying to do a wax up by hand. But thankfully, with AI tools now, it's doing most of the work. So you don't have to be a master technician to be able to produce something that looks quite nice, because the AI will do it for you. What you have to do as a clinician is prep the tooth well. Because if you under prep and there's not enough restorative space, then the design doesn't look so good. And then you get frustrated. So the key thing for us is just prep well, retract the gingiva well so you can see the margins, and scan well. And the AI does a lot of the work for you. If you click on this crown, you can click it and it will open up a whole bunch of tools. You can see them on the bottom. You can go back to editing the margin line. You can edit the inner part of the crown. And this is basically editing things like how much cement space there is. You can transform the crown, which is those arrows, and you can move it around or rotate it. And of course, you can edit the shape of this design. And if we just click this button, you'll see on the top left, it gives you a whole bunch of tools. Deform, hole, hook. Hook is an interesting one. I can remember the Dentbird guys telling me this. It's like so you can hold the crown or it's something that allows you to put it in as a temporary and then take it off or something like that. So there are some interesting tools here. I mean, I personally just use brush size and you have your add, remove, smooth tool. And again, if this is all very weird for you and you don't understand anything that's going on, just go and try it out. You'll quickly realize what it means. So it's like a paintbrush, and you can start changing this design if you wish. So for example, that mesolingual cusp, I don't really like how it's sticking out a little bit. So I can use a remove tool and just brush over that to reduce that cusp. And you can see that there. And when you click the tool and you hover it over the design, it will show you the intensity, meaning how hard it removes, and it also, or the strength, and it also shows you the size of the brush, where it's going to impact. Here's my tip and advice, guys. With any CAD tool, whether it's Exocad, Ceric, Dentbird, the less you play around with these brush tools, the better. It is borderline impossible to replicate that anatomy on the occlusal with the brush tools. In any CAD software, whatever you get initially is going to look the best. So try to minimize how much you use you use these tools. You really want to get the design and then do a few touch-ups if you don't like the marginal ridge height or you don't like something and you want to smooth something a little bit. That's all you do. You minimize using any of the tools on the occlusal aspect because there's a better tool for that, which I'll show you. So this is your design. We reduce the mesolingual cusp a little bit. If you look on the bottom there, there's another tool right next to the tool that's shaded with the blue square. And it shows three arrows, interproximal and occlusal. And there it is. So this is called your adapt tool. And any CAD software worth its salt has something like this. And what it basically does is with one button, it will remove any intersections. And what it means by that, if the crown design is too high, the upper scan will intersect it. And so with this one button, it will remove all those intersections. In other words, making sure your design is not high. And realistically, this is the workflow you should be using. You should be minimizing the brushing on top of the occlusal anatomy because you'll ruin it. But you should be using these adapt tools. With a click of a button, you can decide how much occlusal relief you want, whether you want it slightly open, slightly intersecting, and also the interproximal distance. Negative 0.02 millimeters, meaning an intersection of negative 0.02 millimeters, is typical. And sometimes, depending on your material of choice, you have to play around with this. And what I mean by that, if you're milling and glazing, sometimes you reduce this a little bit because when you add a glaze layer, you're adding a layer of material onto this crown. If you're just printing a crown, maybe you make this a little bit heavier because you maybe are polishing the crown after it gets print and you're removing material. So you do have to think about these little things, but honestly, it's not too complicated. If you do a few trial runs and at least try it on a model, you'll get the hang of it, and then it becomes second nature. So then that's your crown. This is your Dentbird crown, and this took me honestly about 5 minutes, and I barely did anything. I mean, if you wanted to get fancy and play around with it, you can, but this is my point with the future of AI CAD. It's just making us more efficient. Then you have this export button on the top right-hand side corner. And this is how you're going to export this design file. As I mentioned to you about printing or milling, you have to give it a design file. When you click export, this is what you see. Okay, so it tells you, do you want the coordinates to the CAM software? Can be a little complicated if you're not into milling, but it basically holds the crown in space. And when you mill things, you need to use a CAM software. So it's CAD CAM, computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacture. Sorry, guys. Obviously, it's a bit late for me tonight. And So with the CAM software is what runs your milling machine. It's a CNC software. Same thing as they use in many different industries like metalworking, etc. And so you take this design and you need to put it into a CAM software. Typically, if you buy a milling machine from a reputable distributor, they will set this up for you. They will set up the CAM software so you can mill something. If they didn't, you need to make sure they do. And there's a few popular milling softwares for CAM, such as Millbox, etc. Some softwares have their own CAM, like Exocad, etc. Cerac has its own CAM. The other thing with printing that makes it easier is that the CAM is very simple. It's just nesting the crown on the build platform and that's it. It's a lot simpler than milling in that regard. The other thing you can see is that you can choose the file format. So it even for the exporting of the design gives you options. Most of the time, when you export a scan, you will want to do an PLY or OBJ because you want the color file. So that way, when you're designing the crown and marginating, you can see the color file. With the crown design, most of the time you want it in STL, the monochrome file. Why? Because most CAM software only takes STL. A lot of printer software only takes STL. And this is the STL files. What's really cool about Dentbird is that when you export, it automatically also gives you a die. On the left, that's a die. So if you're printing these, you can print the die, you can print the crown, and you can test fit it. And you can send this, if you're a lab, you can send this die to the clinician. Because if he has any concerns about it, like an open margin or anything, this proves that wrong. Because if the crown fits on the printed die, then the crown is produced correctly. If you're having issues with fitting, the easiest way to solve it is a printed die or a printed model. If the crown fits on the model, but not in the mouth, it's because the scan is at fault. If a lab doesn't send you a printed model and the crown doesn't fit, but when you print the model, it fits on the model, then the lab is at fault. Something happened with the production. So really, the whole die and model idea is just to test the fit. As a lab, you do this all the time. As a clinician, for single crowns, I do them totally digital and modelless. Once you get the workflow down packed, you may print a couple of dies the first time, but once you get the workflow down packed, you don't need to print a die, especially for a single crown. It's very simple. And that's basically CAD CAM. And this is why I'm saying that with this uptake of printers that's happening, it's really exciting to see how these AI tools are going to take charge, I think, because to me, it totally makes sense that CAD is on the cloud. And it totally makes sense that AI can run the CAD. Because if AI can, pass a bar exam you remember that a few years ago, the headlines, ChatGPT passed the bar exam, and you can see the amazing stuff it does now with video generation. I think it can design a crown. The key part now is that we prep the crown well because in any system, if the input is not good, the output is not good either. And the last thing I'll mention is the price. So what is the price of all this? It's no hidden thing. If you just go to the Dentbird Solutions webpage, it has pricing right there. One interesting thing is that they've changed their model. A lot of you may have been exposed to Dentbird in the past, and they used to charge per export. This was a very common licensing model in a lot of things, like a lot of surgical guide software. They charge you per export. So the software was free, but if you ever exported something, you would get charged. The model here now is a subscription fee. The software is still totally free, which is really good. Any of you who are interested in CAD or interested in upskilling in digital dentistry, there's really no reason not to try the software, at least for a couple of cases. Next time you take a scan, try it out and see what you think. And at least start warming up to the idea of these CAD tools and how they work. And reach out to me if you're having issues. So with the pricing, you have monthly or annual subscription. As usual, annual gives you 2 months free. So if you're paying monthly and you just want to try it out for a month and print a few things, it's $150 per month. And what's really interesting about these cloud softwares, is that that is much cheaper than any CAD software. A lot of CAD software now, the traditional ones, Exocad, 3Shape, are in the thousands. So we are totally seeing this market shift now. And I expect all companies to do something very similar. And if you're curious what the difference is between them, free just lets you design. You can't export that design. So you're just designing for fun. Without exporting, you can't do anything. Light allows you to design and export some crowns. And so many of you who just want to do some crowns may choose the light. And those who want to do those who want to do bridges will have to go to the pro version. And that is everything, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. That was a total crash course on Dentbird. Look, it's like intraoral scanners. When people ask me which one should I buy and they've got a few options in their mind, I just tell them go try it. That is the best way to figure it out for yourself. Just try it, ask your friends, ask your colleagues, and see which workflow works for you. Because every clinic, even though we're all very similar, we all operate in slightly different ways. And so, because the software is free, if you have a printer and you're thinking about printing some crowns, try it out. Make an account, put some scans in there, and see if this is what you want to do in-house. But one thing is clear, guys, that dentistry is changing very fast. Every 6 months, there seems to be a huge change. And now more than ever, we have to embrace technology because it is improving dentistry in all ways, the patient experience, the patient outcomes, our accuracy, our efficiency, and it's just such a fun time to be a dentist. Thank you so much for listening. All of you around the world, some of you may be, taking time off from your families or from work. I really appreciate your time. I hope you got something out of it, and I welcome any questions about all this AI CAD. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for that insightful and inspiring presentation. Like Dr. Ahmed has mentioned, digital workflow is really important and emerging nowadays for efficiency in your clinics and labs. And Dentbird Solutions can certainly help you with that. So thank you again, Dr. Ahmed, for a wonderful webinar. We've not yet received any questions so far for the webinar. If you have any questions, you can share them after the webinar through our emails. We will send you an informative email with the link to our webpage and AI webinar. So if you have any questions after the webinar, please make sure to check your email. And as Dr. Ahmed said, if you're not familiar with CAD tools or just haven't used AI tools yet, we do have an A to Z webinar on Dentbird YouTube. So please check it out. With just 3 clicks with Dentbird, you can change your workflow. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar as we don't have any more questions. Thank you all once again, and a very special thank you to Dr. Ahmed for sharing his time and expertise with us today.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Al, and have a great day, everyone.
See you guys. Enjoy. See you around in a conference somewhere around the world.